The moment I signed my name on that contract, my life became a lie so beautiful it hurt to breathe. For 3 years, I played the part of Caleb Monroe's boyfriend, smiling for cameras, holding his hand at galas, and laughing at his dry humor in boardrooms. But as the ink dried on the final page of our agreement, Caleb's lips crashed into mine, and the world I'd built on pretense shattered. My name is Eli Torres, and this is how I fell in love with the man I was paid to pretend to love. It started in a cramped coffee shop in downtown Los Angeles, the kind of place where overpriced lattes and ambition hung thick in the air. I was 24, a struggling graphic designer with a portfolio full of dreams and a bank account screaming for mercy. Caleb Monroe, the 37-year-old director of Horizon Media, walked in like he owned the city. He didn't just walk, he commanded the room, all sharp jawline and tailored suit, his presence pulling every eye toward him. I was sketching in the corner, nursing a cold drip coffee, when his assistant slid into the chair across from me. "Mr. Monroe has a proposition," she said. Her voice clipped. "Professional. It's unconventional, but it pays well." I laughed, thinking it was a scam. "What? Does he need a logo designed by tomorrow?" She didn't smile. "He needs a partner. A public one. For 3 years." I stared, my pencil frozen mid-stroke. The deal was simple, she explained. Caleb was under scrutiny as board, his investors, the tabloids. A powerful man in Hollywood needed a polished image, and a stable relationship was part of the package. His last breakup had been a PR disaster, splashed across every gossip site from LA to New York. He needed someone to play the part of his devoted boyfriend, someone charming, relatable, and discreet. Someone like me. "Why me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a dossier, photos of me at art galleries, my social media posts, even a blurry shot of me laughing at a friend's barbecue. "You're authentic," she said. "You're likable. And you're nobody. No one will dig too deep." The contract was ironclad, 3 years, a 6-figure payout, an apartment in West Hollywood, and a strict NDA. I'd attend events, pose for photos, and live a life that wasn't mine. In return, I'd never want for anything except, maybe, the truth. I signed because I was desperate. I signed because I thought I could keep my heart out of it. I was wrong. The first time I met Caleb face to face, he didn't smile. He leaned back in his office chair, his blue eyes scanning me like I was a script he wasn't sure he wanted to greenlight. "You understand what this entails?" he asked, his voice low, almost dangerous. "I'm not an idiot," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. "I play the part. You get your image, and I get paid. Easy." His lips twitched. Not quite a smile. "Nothing about this will be easy, Eli." He was right. The first event was a charity gala at the Beverly Hilton. All crystal chandeliers and egos dressed in designer gowns. Caleb's hand rested on the small of my back as we walked the red carpet, cameras flashing like gunfire. I smiled, leaned into him, and whispered something flirty for the photographers. The headlines the next day called us Hollywood's new power couple. I laughed at the absurdity, but Caleb didn't. He just stared at the articles, his jaw tight, like he was carrying a weight I couldn't see. At home, our shared penthouse, a sterile palace of glass and chrome, I started to notice the cracks in his armor. He'd pour a glass of whiskey after events, staring out at the city skyline, silent for hours. I try to make him laugh, tossing out bad puns or teasing him about his terrible taste in ties. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes he'd look at me like I was the only thing keeping him grounded. "Eli," he said one night, 6 months into the contract, as we sat on the couch watching some awful rom-com, "why do you make this so easy?" I shrugged, my heart racing. "Because I'm good at pretending." But I wasn't. Not really. Every touch, every shared glance, every time he called me babe, for the camera sit chipped away at the walls I'd built. I started noticing the way his laugh softened when it was just us. The way his fingers lingered when he handed me a coffee. I told myself it was part of the act. I told myself I was just a prop in his world. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a quiet evening. Just the two of us in the penthouse. No cameras. No scripts. I was sketching at the kitchen island, and Caleb was reading through contracts, his glasses slipping down his nose. He looked human, vulnerable. Not the untouchable director, but a man who was tired, maybe even lonely. Eli, he said suddenly, his voice cutting through the silence. Do you ever wonder what this would be like if it was real? My pencil froze. My heart stopped. I looked up, and his eyes were locked on mine, raw and unguarded. For the first time, I saw something in him I hadn't before: fear. Real. I echoed, my throat dry. He stood, crossing the room in 3 strides, and stopped just short of me. His hand hovered near my cheek, like he wanted to touch me but didn't know how. What if I don't want to pretend anymore? I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what to feel. All I knew was that the line between our lie and the truth was blurring, and I was terrified of what came next. The air in the penthouse felt heavier after Caleb's words, like the world had tilted just enough to throw me off balance. I stared at him, his question hanging between us like a live wire. What if I don't want to pretend anymore? He'd said, and I couldn't tell if it was a confession or a test. Caleb, I started, my voice shaky. You can't just say that and expect me to know what it means. He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. It means I'm tired of this game. Eli, I'm tired of pretending I don't feel something when I look at you. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But 3 years of playing a role had made me cynical. Was this another script? Another layer of the act to keep me in line? I pushed back from the island, needing space. You're the one who wrote the contract, I said, sharper than I meant. This was your idea. His face fell, just for a second, before the mask slipped back into place. You're right, he said quietly. My idea. My mistake. He walked away, leaving me with my sketchbook and 1,000 questions I didn't dare ask. The next few weeks were torture. We went through the motions: dinners, premieres, a weekend getaway to Napa for a magazine spread. I smiled. He charmed, and the world ate it up. But behind closed doors, the silence grew louder. He stopped lingering after events, stopped laughing at my jokes. I told myself it was better this way. Keep it professional. Keep it safe. But every time his hand brushed mine, my body betrayed me, aching for something I couldn't name. Then came the company retreat in Big Sur. Horizon Media rented out a cliffside resort, all crashing waves and redwood trees. It was supposed to be a team-building weekend, but for us, it was another performance. We shared a cabin. Of course, optics demanded it. The first night, I found Caleb on the porch, staring at the ocean, a glass of bourbon in his hand. You're doing it again, I said, leaning against the railing. Doing what? His voice was rough, like he hadn't spoken in hours. Brooding. It's not as sexy as you think. He chuckled, low and warm, and for a moment, it felt like before his confession, before the tension that followed. You're impossible, he said, but there was no bite in it. I sat beside him, our knees brushing. Talk to me, Caleb. What's going on in that head of yours? He didn't answer right away. The waves crashed below, relentless, and when he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I didn't expect you, Eli. When I started this, I thought I could control it. Control us. Us. I laughed, but it came out bitter. There's no us. Caleb. There's a contract. A paycheck. A deadline. He turned to me, his eyes fierce. Is that all this is to you? A job? I wanted to lie. I wanted to say yes, to protect myself. But the truth clawed its way out. No, I admitted. It hasn't been just a job for a long time. The air shifted, charged with something dangerous and alive. He set his glass down, his hand trembling slightly, and leaned closer. Then why are we still pretending? Before I could answer, his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. It was his assistant, reminding him of a morning meeting. He cursed under his breath, and just like that, the wall was back up. The retreat dragged on, a blur of team exercises and forced smiles. But something had shifted between us. At night, when the cabin was quiet, I'd catch him watching me, his expression unreadable. I started to notice the small things, how he'd leave my favorite coffee on the counter, how he'd pause before saying, "Babe," like it meant more than it should. One afternoon, during a hike, we got separated from the group. The trail wound through dense forest, the air thick with pine and salt. Caleb was ahead, his steps sure, but he kept glancing back to make sure I was there. "You're not going to let me get eaten by a bear, are you?" I teased, trying to lighten the mood. He smirked. "I'd fight the bear, but I'd probably lose. You're on your own, Torres." I laughed, and for a moment, it was easy again. But then I tripped on a root, my ankle twisting painfully. Caleb was at my side in an instant, his hands steadying me. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft, urgent. I nodded, but my ankle throbbed. He knelt to check it, his fingers gentle as they prodded the swelling. "You're not walking on this," he said, and before I could protest, he scooped me up, carrying me like I weighed nothing. "Caleb, put me down," I said, half laughing, half mortified. "Not a chance," he said, his voice firm but warm. "I've got you." And he did. For the rest of the hike, he carried me, his arms strong and sure, his breath warm against my temple. I told myself it was just practicality, just part of the act. But the way he held me, the way his heart beat against my chest, it felt real. Too real. When we got back to the cabin, he set me down on the couch, grabbing an ice pack from the freezer. As he wrapped it around my ankle, his fingers lingered, and I couldn't look away from him. "Eli," he said, his voice barely audible, "I need to tell you something." My heart stopped. "What?" But before he could answer, the door burst open, and his assistant stormed in, her face pale. "Caleb, we have a problem. The board knows." The board knows. Those 3 words hit like a punch to the gut. Caleb's face hardened, his hand pulling back from my ankle like he'd been burned. "What do they know?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. His assistant, Lauren, glanced at me, then back at him. "They know about the contract. Someone leaked it. There's an emergency meeting tomorrow morning." I felt the air leave the room. The contract, our secret. Our lie was out in the open. My mind raced, picturing headlines, lawsuits, my name dragged through the mud. But worse than that was the look on Caleb's face. A mix of fury and something deeper. Something like fear. "Give me the details," he said, standing. "Now." Lauren nodded and left, leaving us in a silence that felt like a storm about to break. I stood, wincing as my ankle protested. "Caleb, what does this mean?" He didn't look at me. "It means we're in trouble." "Trouble?" I snapped, my fear turning to anger. "This was your plan, Caleb. You said it was foolproof. You said." "I know what I said," he shouted, his voice echoing off the cabin walls. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. I didn't think anyone would find out. I thought I could protect you. Protect me. I laughed. Bitter. You hired me to lie for you. That's not protection. That's using me. His eyes met mine, raw and wounded. Is that what you think? That I've been using you? I wanted to scream yes, to push him away, to protect myself from the ache in my chest. But the truth was Messier. I don't know what to think anymore. I admitted. You tell me you don't want to pretend. Then you shut me out. And now this. What am I supposed to believe? Caleb. He stopped pacing, his shoulders slumping. Believe that I never meant for it to go this far. Believe that he cut himself off, shaking his head. We'll deal with this tomorrow. Get some rest. He walked out, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a throbbing ankle. The next morning, the board meeting was held in a sterile conference room back in LA. I wasn't supposed to be there, but Caleb insisted, saying I deserved to know what was coming. The board members, mostly older men in expensive suits, stared at us like we were criminals. Lauren handed out folders, each one containing a copy of our contract, highlighted and annotated like evidence in a trial. One of the board members, a man named Richard Holt, leaned forward, his voice cold. Mr. Monroe, you've made a mockery of this company. A fake relationship. Do you have any idea how this looks? Caleb's jaw tightened. It was a strategic decision. My personal life was becoming a distraction. This fixed it. Fixed it. Richard scoffed. It's a scandal waiting to happen. And you? He turned to me, his eyes narrowing. You went along with this for what? Money. I bristled, my hands clenching under the table. I did what I had to do. Just like you do what you have to do to keep your stock prices up. The room went silent. Caleb's hand brushed mine under the table, a small gesture that steadied me. Richard leaned back, smirking. We want you out. Caleb, step down as director, or we'll leak this ourselves. My stomach dropped. Caleb was Horizon Media. He'd built it from nothing, poured his life into it. Losing it would destroy him. I'll consider it, Caleb said, his voice steady but his eyes burning. But I want a week to make my case. The board agreed, reluctantly, and we left the room in a haze of tension. Outside, Caleb pulled me aside, his grip on my arm firm but gentle. Eli, I need you to trust me. Trust you, I said, pulling away. After all this, why should I? Because I'm not letting them take everything I've built, he said, his voice fierce. And I'm not letting them hurt you. I wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at me. That night, back at the penthouse, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the meeting, the contract, Caleb's words and Big Sir. I was in too deep, and I didn't know how to get out or if I even wanted to. The next day, Caleb threw himself into damage control, meeting with lawyers, PR teams, anyone who could help. I tried to stay out of it, focusing on my own work, but the tabloids were already sniffing around. A gossip blog posted a blurry photo of us at the retreat, captioned, "Trouble in Paradise for Caleb Monroe's boyfriend." I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. But then Caleb came home, his tie loosened, his eyes exhausted but determined. I have a plan, he said, but I need you with me. All in. What's the plan? I asked, my voice wary. He took a deep breath. We go public. Not with the contract, with the truth. I stared at him, my heart racing. The truth. What truth? Caleb. He stepped closer, his hand cupping my face. The truth that I've been falling for you since the day we met. That this stopped being a lie a long time ago. My breath caught. His thumb brushed my cheek, and for a moment, the world disappeared. But then reality crashed back in. Caleb, if we do this, it's not just about us. It's your career, Your company. I know, he said, his voice steady. But I'd rather lose it all than lose you. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could trust him. But as he looked at me, his eyes full of hope and fear, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe, just maybe, this could be real. Caleb's words hung in the air like a promise I wasn't sure I could believe. I'd rather lose it all than lose you. It was the kind of line that belonged in a movie, not in our messy, contract-bound reality. But the way he looked at me, his hand still warm against my cheek, made me want to believe it, made me want to risk everything. Okay, I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. I'm in. But if we're doing this, we do it together. No more secrets. He nodded, a flicker of relief in his eyes. No more secrets. The plan was reckless, insane even. We'd hold a press conference, admit the contract, and spin it into a love story. Caleb's PR team worked overtime, crafting a narrative that painted us as two people who started with a lie but found something real. It was a gamble Horizon's investors could pull out. The board could force Caleb's resignation, and the public could tear us apart. But Caleb was adamant. The truth was our only shot. The press conference was set for a Friday morning at Horizon's headquarters. The days leading up to it were a blur of rehearsals, legal consultations, and sleepless nights. I'd catch Caleb pacing at 3 a.m., muttering to himself, his confidence fraying at the edges. I wasn't much better. My stomach churned every time I thought about standing in front of a room full of reporters. My life laid bare. The night before the conference, we sat on the penthouse balcony, the city sprawling below us. Caleb was quiet, his fingers tapping restlessly against his glass. You nervous? I asked, trying to keep my voice light. He glanced at me, a small smile tugging at his lips. Terrified. You. Same, I admitted. But we're doing this, right? Together. He reached for my hand, his grip warm and steady. Together. The next morning, the conference room was a circus, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions before we even started. Caleb stood at the podium, his suit impeccable, his face calm but pale. I stood beside him, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. Ladies and gentlemen, Caleb began, his voice steady despite the chaos. 3 years ago, I made a decision to protect my company and my reputation. I entered into a contractual relationship with Eli Torres, a man I barely knew, to create the image of stability my board demanded. The room erupted, questions flying like bullets. Caleb raised a hand, silencing them. But what started as a contract became something more. Eli is not just a partner in me, he's the person who's made me better, braver, and more honest than I've ever been. I love him, and I'm done pretending. My breath caught. He hadn't rehearsed that part. The room went silent, every eye on me. I stepped forward, my voice shaking but clear. I signed that contract for money, I said. But I stayed because of Caleb. Because somewhere along the way, I fell in love with him too. The cameras went wild. Questions poured in, some supportive, some vicious. But Caleb's hand found mine, and we faced it together, just like he'd promised. The fallout was immediate. Social media exploded, some calling us romantic, others calling us frauds. Horizon stock dipped, but not as badly as we'd feared. The board was furious, scheduling another meeting to discuss Caleb's future. But something else happened. 2 letters, emails, messages from people who saw themselves in our story, who thanked us for being honest, for showing that love could be messy and real. That night, back at the penthouse, Caleb pulled me into his arms, his forehead resting against mine. We did it, he whispered. We're free. But we weren't. Not yet. The board meeting was brutal. Richard Holt led the charge, demanding Caleb's resignation. You've turned this company into a soap opera. He spat. We can't trust you to lead. Caleb didn't flinch. This company is stronger than ever, he said. Our transparency has earned us loyalty, not just from investors, but from the public. You want me out? Fine. But you'll lose more than you gain. The room was tense. The vote too close to call. I sat in the back, my hands clenched, praying for a miracle. When the results came in, Caleb kept his position barely. Richard stormed out, vowing to fight another day. Outside, Caleb pulled me into a corner, his eyes bright with relief. We won, he said, grinning. For now? For now? I echoed, but my chest felt lighter than it had in months. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. We rebuilt. Slowly. Caleb worked harder than ever, proving himself to the board, to the world. I went back to my art, designing a campaign for Horizon that went viral for all the right reasons. We were still under scrutiny, still dodging paparazzi, but it felt different now. We weren't pretending anymore. One night, as we walked through Griffith Park, the city lights glittering below, Caleb stopped and turned to me. Eli, he said, his voice soft but sure. I don't know what happens next, but I know I want you in it. I smiled, my heart full. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. The weeks after the press conference felt like walking on a tightrope. The world knew our truth, but the victory was fragile. Caleb was still director, but the board watched his every move, waiting for a misstep. I threw myself into my work, hoping creativity would anchor me, but the weight of public scrutiny followed us everywhere. Paparazzi lingered outside our building, and every social media post I made was dissected for hidden meanings. Yet, amidst the chaos, something new bloomed between us. Without the contract, every touch, every glance, carried a different weight. Caleb's smiles were softer, his laughter freer. One morning, I woke to find him making pancakes in the kitchen, humming off-key, his hair a mess. You're up early, I said, leaning against the counter, trying not to grin. He flipped a pancake, smirking. Figured I'd surprise you. Don't get used to it. I laughed, stealing a piece of bacon from the plate. Too late. I'm keeping you. His eyes met mine, warm and unguarded. Good. But the peace didn't last. Richard Holt wasn't done. A week later, Lauren called us into Caleb's office, her face grim. Holt's rallying investors. She said, he's claiming Caleb's leadership is unstable, using the contract as proof. They're pushing for a vote of no confidence. Caleb's jaw clenched. Let them try. I've got the numbers. Do you? Lauren asked, her voice sharp. Holt's been meeting with key shareholders. If they flip, you're out. I felt sick. Caleb had fought so hard, risked everything. Losing Horizon now would break him. What can we do? I asked. Lauren hesitated. You need a win. Something big. The new campaign Eli's working on, if it lands, it could sway the investors. All eyes turned to me. My campaign, a bold rebrand for Horizon's streaming platform, was still in drafts. It was good, but unfinished. I'll get it done, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. 2 days. Caleb squeezed my shoulder. You've got this. I worked nonstop, fueled by coffee and adrenaline. Caleb stayed late with me, offering feedback, bringing takeout, even sketching ideas when my brain hit a wall. It was the first time we felt like a real team, not just a performance. By the second night, we had a vibrant, inclusive campaign that leaned into our story, turning our scandal into a message of authenticity. The investor meeting was a battlefield. Holt presented first, his slides dripping with condescension, painting Caleb as reckless. Then it was our turn. I stood beside Caleb, my heart pounding, and pitched the campaign. The room was silent as the final slide faddied a mock-up ad featuring us, hand in hand, with the tagline, "Real stories. Real love. Real horizon." The investors clapped. Holt's face twisted, but he said nothing. Later, we learned the vote of no confidence failed. Caleb was safe for now. That night, we celebrated quietly, just the two of us, with pizza and cheap wine on the penthouse floor. Caleb leaned back against the couch, his arm around me. "You saved me today," he said softly. "We saved each other," I corrected, resting my head on his shoulder. But the victory felt temporary. Holt was still out there, biding his time. And there was something else, something Caleb wasn't telling me. I'd catch him staring at his phone, his face tight, before he'd force a smile and change the subject. One evening, as we walked home from a dinner, I couldn't take it anymore. "Caleb, what's going on? You're hiding something." He stopped, his hands in his pockets. "It's nothing you need to worry about." "Bullshit," I said, stepping in front of him. "You said no more secrets. So talk." He sighed, looking away. "It's my family. My father. He's sick. Cancer. He wants to see me, but I haven't spoken to him in years. Not since I came out." My heart sank. I knew Caleb's relationship with his family was strained, but he'd never shared details. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want to drag you into it," he said, his voice breaking. "You've already carried so much for me." I took his hand, squeezing it. "I'm here, Caleb. For all of it. You don't have to do this alone." He looked at me, his eyes glistening. "I don't deserve you, Eli." I smiled, brushing my thumb across his knuckles. "Yeah, you do." The next day, Caleb booked a flight to Chicago, where his father lived. He asked me to come, and I didn't hesitate. The trip was quiet, tense. When we arrived at the small, tidy house in the suburbs, Caleb's hand trembled in mine. His father, James, was frail but sharp-eyed, sitting in a recliner by the window. The reunion was awkward. Stilted years of silence didn't vanish in a day. But as we talked, James softened, his voice cracking as he apologized for pushing Caleb away. "I was wrong," he said, his eyes on his son. "I see you now, and I'm proud." Caleb cried, something I'd never seen before. I held his hand, my heart swelling with pride and pain. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Chicago changed Caleb. He came back quieter, more reflective, but there was a lightness in him too, like a weight had lifted. Reconciling with his father, even partially, gave him something I hadn't realized he'd been missing: peace. But back in LA, the storm was far from over. Holt wasn't done. A week after our trip, a new article dropped, this time in a major outlet. Caleb Monroe's fake romance, a betrayal of trust. The headline screamed. It wasn't just about the contract Anna Marie had dug into Caleb's past, his family estrangement, even my struggling artist days. Someone was feeding Holt information. Someone close. Caleb was furious, pacing the penthouse like a caged animal. "Who's doing this?" he demanded, slamming his phone down. "Who's got access to my life like this?" I didn't have an answer, but the betrayal stung. We'd fought so hard to be honest, to rebuild, and now it was unraveling. I reached for his hand, trying to ground him. "We'll figure it out," I said. "Together." He looked at me, his eyes softening. "You keep saying that. Why do you stay, Eli? After all this?" I swallowed hard, the truth spilling out before I could stop it. "Because I love you, you idiot. And I'm not letting some asshole with a vendetta take that away." He froze, then pulled me into a kiss, fierce and desperate. It wasn't like the soft, Tentative kisses we'd shared before this was raw. Real. A promise and a plea. When we pulled apart, he pressed his forehead to mine. I love you too, he whispered. I'm not letting go. We spent the next days playing detective. Lauren helped, combing through emails, phone records, anything that might point to the leak. The breakthrough came when I noticed a pattern: small, innocuous messages from an intern, Mia, who'd been at every major event. She was young, eager, and had access to Caleb's schedule, his files, even our apartment. When we confronted her, she broke down, admitting Holt had paid her to spy. He said it was for the company's good. She sobbed. I didn't know it would go this far. Caleb fired her on the spot, his voice cold but controlled. Later, alone, he sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I trusted her, he said. I trusted too many people. I sat beside him, my hand on his back. You can trust me. He looked up, his eyes searching mine. I know. With Mia gone, we had a chance to fight back. Caleb's lawyers sent a cease and desist to Holt, threatening legal action for defamation. The board, tired of Holt's tactics, started to distance themselves from him. Our campaign launched to rave reviews, boosting Horizon's stock and silencing some of the critics. But the personal toll was heavy. Caleb was exhausted, his confidence shaken. I wasn't much better. Every day felt like a battle to protect what we'd built. One night, as we lay in bed, Caleb turned to me, his voice quiet. Eli, do you ever think about walking away? Starting over somewhere else? I propped myself up on my elbow, studying his face. Do you? He sighed. Sometimes. But then I think about you, and I know I can't. I kissed him softly, my heart aching. We're not running, Caleb. We've come too far. He smiled, pulling me closer. You're stubborn. You know that. Takes one to know one. I shot back, and we laughed, the sound a small victory in itself. The next challenge came unexpectedly. My sister, Anna, called from San Diego, her voice tight. Eli, there's a reporter here. He's asking about you and Caleb. He knows about the contract. I froze, my stomach dropping. What did you say? Nothing, she said. But he's digging. He mentioned Mom and Dad. Their business. I'm worried. I flew to San Diego the next day, Caleb at my side. My parents ran a small bakery, a labor of love that barely paid the bills. The reporter, a sleazy type with a fake smile, was waiting outside. Eli Torres, he said, shoving a recorder in my face. Care to comment on your fake relationship with Caleb Monroe? Caleb stepped forward, his voice icy. You're on private property. Leave, or I'll call the police. The reporter smirked, but backed off. Inside, my parents were shaken but supportive. We don't care about the contract, my mom said, hugging me. We just want you happy. Caleb charmed them, helping my dad knead dough, laughing with my mom over old photos. Watching him with my family, I realized how much he'd become a part of my life, not just a director, not just a contract, but my home. When we got back to LA, Caleb made a decision. I'm done hiding, he said. No more playing defense. We're telling our story, our way. Caleb's plan was bold, a documentary. Not a glossy PR piece, but a raw, honest look at our journey from the contract to the love that grew despite it. He pitched it to Horizon's streaming platform, framing it as a way to reclaim our narrative. The board, surprisingly, agreed, seeing it as a chance to humanize the company. We brought in a small, trusted crew, led by a director named Samira, who'd made her name with intimate, unflinching documentaries. She interviewed us separately, then together, digging into the messy details: the contract, the lies, The moments we fell in love. I was nervous, bearing my soul on camera, but Caleb's presence steadied me. Tell me about the moment you knew, Samira said during our joint interview, her eyes kind but piercing. I glanced at Caleb, his hand warm in mine. It was in Big Sur, I said, when he carried me after I twisted my ankle. He didn't have to, but he did, and I realized I trusted him completely. Caleb smiled, his thumb brushing my knuckles. For me, it was earlier. The first time you laughed at one of my terrible jokes. I thought, this guy's going to ruin me. And you did. The room laughed, but my heart swelled. We were telling the truth. Finally. And it felt like freedom. The documentary took months to produce. And during that time, we rebuilt. Holt's influence waned as investors rallied behind Caleb's vision. My campaign kept Horizon in the spotlight. And our relationship became a symbol of something bigger: authenticity in a world obsessed with image. But there were still battles. My parents' bakery faced harassment from trolls, egged on by Holt's lingering allies. Caleb hired security, paid for repairs, and even spent a weekend helping my dad repaint the storefront. You didn't sign up for this, I told him, watching him wield a paint roller like a pro. He grinned, paint smudged on his cheek. I signed up for you. This comes with the territory. The documentary premiered at a small LA theater, packed with industry insiders, friends, and family. My parents flew in, Anna beside them, all beaming with pride. As the credits rolled, the audience stood, clapping, some wiping tears. Samira had captured us flawed, human, in love. Afterward, at the reception, Caleb pulled me aside, his eyes bright. We did it, Eli. We made it through. I laughed, leaning into him. Yeah, but you're stuck with me now. No contract to escape. He smirked. Good. I don't want one. 3 months later, our contract's end date came and went. We marked it quietly, just the two of us, on the penthouse balcony. The city sparkled below, alive and chaotic. But up here, it was just us. Caleb turned to me, his expression serious. Eli, I've been thinking. Oh no, I teased. That's dangerous. He laughed, then pulled a small box from his pocket. My breath caught as he opened it, revealing a simple silver band. This isn't a contract, he said, his voice steady but soft. This is a promise. I want you in my life, not for 3 years, but for all of them. Marry me. Tears stung my eyes. I nodded, unable to speak, and he slipped the ring on my finger. Then he pulled me into a kiss, deep and fierce, the kind that felt like a beginning. The world didn't stop spinning. There were still battles: Holt's lawsuits, tabloid rumors, the pressure of Caleb's job. But we faced them together, no longer pretending, no longer afraid. Our love wasn't a lie anymore. It was the truest thing we had. And as I stood there, wrapped in Caleb's arms, the city alive below us, I knew we'd write our own ending, one worth fighting for.